he has the power to wipe out the entire human race. If we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
The greatest gladiator match in the history of the world. God versus man.
This is the Next Reel's Film Board, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and the gang of thugs has once again gathered to spoil a brand new film currently in theaters. This month on the show, it's Zack Snyder's next chapter in his DC Destructathon with Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Today on set we have Andy Nelson as The Flash.
Hello, hello. Speedy as ever.
Tommy Handsome as Cyborg.
Oh, is that who that half man was? I didn't know who that one was. I called him Gizmo. I knew Fasty and Water Buffalo or whatever it was, but I just didn't know him. Okay, I'm good. We're good.
We've got Justin J.J. Yeager as Aquaman.
I'm Water Buffalo.
And Steve Sarmento as Lex Luthor.
I'll be bald and maniacal. Bald and maniacal, I tell you. I'm bald and maniacal.
Before we get into our discussion, we invite you to learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in Overcast or Apple Podcasts or YouTube or your podcast app of choice, and follow us on Twitter or Facebook at The Next Reel. Don't forget The Next Reel's Instagram, hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge with Games Master Steven Smart. New contest starting every Monday. Batman v Superman, gentlemen. Rotten Tomatoes currently sitting right now at 29% with the critics. Dawn of Justice, it says, smothers a potentially powerful story and some of America's most iconic superheroes in a grim whirlwind of effects-driven action, and yet the audience score is a stronger 73%. Are we a mixed jury this month? Opening statements, please. Steve, why don't you kick us off?
I will say I enjoyed this much more than I expected. I think avoiding the trailers is making a difference now in how I view movies. I had seen the trailer or the teaser once and maybe the first trailer once, and that was it. The movie delivered on what I expected. There are some weaknesses in it, but overall I enjoyed it. I was far less frustrated and angry than I have been with Zack Snyder's past few films. I also enjoyed this more than Man of Steel.
I didn't expect that to kick us off. JJ.
So, Steve, I'm really happy that you said that, because my opening remarks is this is a bad movie. This is a real bad movie. This is a real bad movie. I had a lot of trouble with it. I found that it lacked grace and nuance, and it felt like everyone who was involved with making this movie didn't care about anyone else involved in making this movie. So I'm really excited to talk about it. I'm so happy that someone else has a different opinion than me.
Tommy?
I loved it. That's a skit I'm writing called "I Loved It." No, I really actually I enjoyed the beginning quite a bit, sort of dealing with the issues that I and everyone else had with Man of Steel, and then by the time there was this ludicrous rule-breaking dream sequence, the movie got more and more out of hand, more and more haywire, less sense was made, and then the shockwave started, and then when Big Glowy Magoo showed up, I was done. It was not a good movie for me.
Andy?
You know, I definitely have a lot of problems with this movie. Back in college, I'd never been a Superman fan, but I kind of jumped on the bandwagon and bought all the Superman versus Doomsday comics and kind of followed that whole thing to see how Superman would die and all of that. And, you know, I feel like this movie I feel like that. Like it was a means to an end. And that comic series felt like, you know, we don't know what we're going to do with this superhero because he's just Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. Let's kill him and then we'll reboot him and then we can make him edgier, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like they came up with this big thing to do that. This movie, I kind of feel the same. I mean, I kind of half enjoyed it, kind of didn't. I have a lot of issues with it. Overall, I don't know how much I really liked it, but I didn't hate it, and I kind of was expecting to based on all of the comments that I've been hearing people saying. And I guess I kind of compare it to that the Doomsday comic series from the 90s. It's kind of like, I feel like this movie was a means to an end to get to the point where they could do their Justice League movie.
I think you're probably right, Andy, and I fall with you on that front. I definitely did not hate this movie. I did not find it a bad movie. I found it, I went in really trying to I meditated, I found a quiet space, and I said to myself, Pete, you need to reprogram, because this is not Marvel. This is not what you expect to see. You need to go back and watch 300, and you need to go back and watch, some of Zack Snyder's other films, and you need to get yourself into that mindset, because that's the guy. This guy is super, super predictable, and he is capable of delivering only one thing. And as long as you know what that one thing is, you may be able to get yourself past feeling disappointed by this. And I think I did a really good job of that. I was successfully reprogrammed, and I have to tell you, I had a good time at this film. I think that I will talk about the specific character shortly, but what they delivered in Affleck's Batman, I think, is a Batman I wanted to see. And I really enjoyed how they handled his Bruce Wayne Batman counterpart in this film. I enjoyed, I didn't mind the length of it. It felt well paced, and overall, I found myself eagerly awaiting the next film. I think generally the critics are over hard on this, and I can't wait to hear the details of where you guys fall. So the premise of it is this, and this is, I think we've already started. We've got to talk about this first 10 minutes, because to me, the first 10 minutes is redemptive. We get we open with Bruce Wayne. Besides a bit of a montage that gives us 2 minutes of origin story, we open with Bruce Wayne going through, living through the destruction of the Superman Zod fight in Metropolis. And Snyder was widely lambasted for that, because there was a lot of destruction, and it seemed like, excess in terms of the death destroying the city, et cetera, et cetera. And he has come out since. He said, I was making a political statement with that, and people did not seem willing to look at that as a political statement, and so we move on. And that feedback definitely influenced the way he opened this movie. To be able to see that destruction from Bruce Wayne's perspective in that first 10 minutes, I think set the stage really nicely for this film.
Yeah, as I said, I was a fan at the beginning because of the excess and the crazy collateral damage and just the nonsense that was some of the end of Man of Steel. I liked seeing it from the other side. And actually the final shot of that entire sequence, with him holding the girl, looking up in anger at the flying man, was probably one of my favorite shots of the entire movie. I thought it set it up, like you said, Pete, really, really well. It made me excited about the rest of the movie for a while.
Okay, so for the lovers of maybe lover is too far, but for the people who actually kind of enjoyed the film, what other comments do you have on the open, Steve?
Well, I had I wanted to refresh my memory a little bit, so I'd heard that Zack Snyder was drawing a lot on Dark Knight, Frank Miller's Dark Knight, and so I brought my iPad, and as I'm waiting for the film, I'm just sort of revisiting that. And what I was, I guess, impressed with was how much they drew from that visually in the sort of Batman origin story. And it is an origin story, I think, that has sort of permeated culture. Everyone is aware of Batman's origin. There may be little tweaks on it as far as, are they going to the movies? Are they at the theater? Here he drew really explicitly from, Frank Miller. They're going to see Zorro. There's, shots that are really just animated frames from the graphic novel of the gun and the pearls. So I could really see that he's setting the tone from the beginning of, he's going to be pulling this from, he's been very public about, this is a movie for comic book fans. That's what he's trying to do. And I could see that right from the beginning. I enjoyed how they kept that sort of tight up front to give us just a little bit. I was wondering why we needed that, since we've had so many Batman movies, but I appreciated it later on in the film because there's some key information that's essential to the plot that we get in that origin story with Bruce Wayne that plays out. So I understood its function there, but I did appreciate the economy of that. They kept it tight. It wasn't the entire first act of the film. It was sort of the opening credits. We get that. And then the transition into Metropolis during the battle really gave us what we needed to know for Bruce Wayne, Batman's motivation for the film. And I felt it was a strong start. It told me We're not lingering on origin stories. Here's some basic information, and now we're jumping right into the middle of everything. We're picking up where we left off, and we're going to hit the ground running and just go with the story and continue moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I really did like the beginning quite a bit. I thought it. I mean, they've kind of already said it. The anger that Bruce Wayne had at that whole thing, and I enjoyed a number of the different perspectives that they had in the film. I really enjoyed that whole perspective from Bruce Wayne during the beginning of watching that whole fight. And I wasn't a fan of Man of Steel, but I really liked seeing it from that perspective here. Likewise, they had a nice little perspective bit when it's the two cops who go into that building to try to figure out what's going on. And you kind of get it from their point of view as they encounter Batman for the first time. And I thought that was a nice way for us to be introduced to this vigilante hero. Granted, I don't know if a sex traffic ring was the most appropriate way to do it, but in context of what Zack Snyder gave us, it ended up fitting everything that kind of went along with this film.
How'd your kids like it, Andy?
I did make the mistake of bringing my kids to this one.
Did.
I really kind of was. I had no choice. I had to bring them, and there was a lot of. It was tricky because my kids are just. I guess I hadn't been thinking about how unfamiliar they are anyway with the Batman and Superman origin stories. Like I've never shown them the films yet. And so I really was bombarded by questions through the whole thing. It was nonstop. Like, who's that? What is he doing? What's this? What's that?
What's a sex traffic ring?
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a lot of stuff like when Martha Kent was tied up, she's like, what happened to her in the pictures? Why did they write on her head? And it was a lot of conversations to have that were rather uncomfortable, but
they got to grow up sometime. Why not have Zack Snyder be your mentor?
Yeah,
that's right.
He's the mentor.
Yeah.
No, I think, Andy, I like the way you frame it in your opening comments when you said that this film works as a means to an end. And in terms of that, Pete, bringing up this intro, especially looking at Bruce Wayne's sort of perspective on what happened in Man of Steel, I like that. I think that's insightful. And, if I look at it as a frame to get to this plot, I think that's a good way to do it. I was happy with that.
So where did it fall apart for you, JJ? This is your platform.
This is the part where I think that being a comic book fanboy kind of does me a disservice when I see movies like this. But I felt this way in Man of Steel too, and I heard you guys talk about it a little bit in the Wizard of Oz podcast this week too. In that, the thing that disappoints me so much is it feels like that there isn't any sort of grace or care with these characters at all. There's no homage paid at all to the movies that have come before, nor the comic books really. And I appreciate what Steve has said about going to the graphic novel, and this is kind of the dark version of what was in the comic books. But there's this huge universe of source material that everything's been taken from, and it feels like that everything was dismissive of that with, if this is a means to an end, or if we want to tell this story, everything seems rushed to get to that. And there just doesn't seem to be any space or any care. All the characters, there's pretty much no character development in this film at all that I noticed, and I'd love to get your guys' opinion on that. But the thing is that it's interesting that Andy's kids had all these questions, because basically it feels like Zack Snyder is making the movie that he wants to make, or making the universe that he wants to make, regardless of how the audience feels about these characters, and not really informing it either. So he's assuming you're coming with something, but not caring about what you've come with. That's the thing that's really disappointed me with the film, is it felt like there was no nuance. There was no real in-depth way, and it was kind of pervasive. It felt like it was that way in the dialogue. It felt like it was that way in the story. It felt like Zack Snyder was taking a sledgehammer to my head and saying, "Here's the Superman Batman story that we're doing now," and that was really frustrating to me.
It felt a lot like a superhero, and it's kind of a weird thing to say, but it felt like a superhero story that was more born of September 11th than any other film has been. It something about it just sat really. It just was so dark and harsh. And I think I wasn't. I kind of knew it was going to be, because I had seen Man of Steel and I knew that was the direction that he was going. It just kind of kept going that route. And I think what you said was pretty accurate, JJ, that, he didn't bring any nuance to it. He didn't, I just felt like there wasn't a lot of respect paid to these characters that had been created. The problems I had with what he did with Superman in the previous one, I still have those problems. I mean, Superman just doesn't seem to care that much if people die. He seemed to have no problem. He seemed to have no problem killing that guy who was holding Lois Lane hostage at the beginning. I mean,
that's not Superman.
And even I know that Batman.
I know, and
doesn't
I'm no
kill people.
Superman fan. Yeah, right. Neither of them do. And then this whole branding thing that Batman's doing, so he's not really killing them. But then if you get the Batman brand, you're as good as dead in jail. It's like, I don't know. It was strange that he took these characters to places that ended up being so dark.
Yeah, and my feeling as a comic book reader, and again, I couch it by saying that I think that it works in the negative for me, is I kept feeling like in the movie I kept thinking, well, that's not a thing. Well, that's not a thing, and maybe that's the problem of my frame of reference.
So I went back and I read a bunch of these, getting ready for these. I read the Frank Miller. Obviously, there's a huge amount of this work that comes from his work in the Dark Knight Rises, and Lex Luthor, Man of Steel series, and Superman, the 2011 series, and there's Superman and Batman, and where it opens with them working together against Metallo, and there are so many different comics that inform either directly or indirectly this film, leading all the way, obviously, to Death of Superman. That it's hard. I mean, it's definitely it's hard to keep it all sort of clear. But I was really moved by by Man of Steel at the end when he breaks Zod's neck, and I was really frustrated by that, and I felt like I was on an island because that seemed to just completely wash over the public, and I've been carrying that bit of resentment for some time. I don't think that I think this film capitalizes on that experience in a way that I didn't find as oppressive as the Man of Steel. It did it in a way that showed that Superman is an immature character at this point in his sort of superhero-y career. And he is learning. And he is learning as a result of many, many things. He's learning as a result of the contempt, the sort of wishy-washy contempt and love of the global public. He's learning as a result of his relationship with Lois Lane and his friends, and having to make these choices that are deeply personal versus much broader in scope and scale, and he is learning these things, and he's making mistakes. And in this film versus the last, I don't feel like in Man of Steel, I felt like they broke Superman. In this film, I feel like they are doing their best to put him back together in a way that we can at least see that he is struggling with humanity as an alien resident of this planet. And I liked that.
That's true, but that's not a thing. Like, honestly, the thing that bugs me about it is that that's kind of remaking Superman in the image of The Watchmen, which is another Zack Snyder movie.
Right.
And it's like, that's the Watchmen story. That's not Superman's story. Superman is, and this is, again, from my sort of biased frame, but he's supposed to be the embodiment of good. I agree with you. The anger or the resentment you felt when he broke Zod's neck, that doesn't make sense for Superman, but it's going that direction, and it doesn't. I don't know.
But see,
I feel like they're doubling down on the dark.
I think they're doubling down.
Why they would do that?
Yes, I think they are doubling down on some of that darkness because it is a representation of the complexity of our culture right now. And I think, in many respects, the Superman that they are manufacturing for us is the Superman that is the mirror of our times. And saying that this is not a thing, that's not really valid, because it's a thing once they make it a thing. They just made it a thing. It's real now. We have to deal with it. And it's going to be part of the DC cinematic universe. And it is now part of the canon that is Superman. And in 20 years, it will be a significant part of it. And it will definitely be a thing because Zack put it there. And so, I think we really have to look at it as a thing that is representative of who we are. And we are becoming infinitely more complex culturally in the way we handle massive crime, massive global unrest, and aliens, right? And our deep need for salvation in some way, shape, or form. And this Superman demonstrates the complexity of that need.
Exactly. What we grew up with, Christopher Reeve, that's the Superman from the golden age of comic books, from the 50s. And that is that. This is now drawing from the graphic novels and comic books of the 90s when things got gritty and dark. It's been 20 years. It has now become the next wave of things. And that's where things are going. When Bond got rebooted, everybody talked about how Daniel Craig was this more brutal, killing machine. And that's what we're seeing here. We're getting a reboot that has this darker, more brutal, strong side to it. And it was something that I felt in the tone going through. And as Pete said, that's what we're getting. You don't have to like it. This may not be for you, but this is a direction that he has taken and chosen to go with. And, we've got multiple Batmans out there. You can look at, Tim Burton's Batman versus Christopher Nolan's Batman, and they're completely different tones of how those Jokers are portrayed. Is one better than the other, or do we accept them both? Why can't the same thing happen with Superman? I had forgotten. I was reading a little bit about Man of Steel that, really as Pete said, this is this young character. The first time he really shows up in the public eye is this battle with Zod. It's not like people are like, oh, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. He's here to save everybody. He didn't have that reputation at the beginning of that film. And we see that that's starting to develop through this film, but there's still this struggle with what role does this person play? And to me, that was the part of Man of Steel that I really connected with, of the sort of spiritual aspect. And I think it's something we need to talk about in this film as well, because you've got Lex Luthor making multiple references to mythology and gods. And it's something that's going to connect strongly through this. You've got, somebody coming from outer space with this earthly mother, and here he's got to save humanity. And now we've got a character saying, well, wait a second, why do we allow this person who he can do whatever he wants. He can obliterate everyone from the face of this planet. We have no way to stop him. And Bruce Wayne is going to step up to defend humanity, to say one person shouldn't have that much power. And that's the dynamic that I found really interesting in this film. And you can't have that if Superman is the Boy Scout in blue that is, trusted by everyone. We don't have that dynamic. We don't have a story. And I felt that this was a really nice arc to see Bruce Wayne go from, I'm carrying this burden of I am the protector of these people, to the transition that happens as he works through this manipulation that Lex Luthor is sort of pulling the strings on to manipulate everybody, and what revelation he comes to by the end of the film, where we see what position he is in now. That to me was the interesting sort of aspect of the story. That was the arc. This was an origin story, not of an individual character, but of a mindset of this Justice League. It's right there in the title, Dawn of Justice.
Well, and I agree with that. I think for me, it was kind of with all the different perspectives we had of people in the story, I felt like Superman's was kind of not that focused. I mean, we had bits with kind of Lois getting stuck and his mom getting trapped, and just kind of those emotional things that he had to deal with when somebody he loved was in a position of danger. But I felt like, for this guy who's going through these emotions, and I mean, I really enjoyed those elements in this film where he had to go before the Senate hearing and kind of do that sort of political stuff. I thought that was a really interesting element to have in here, despite the fact that it didn't really go anywhere because of the bomb. But I liked that element quite a bit. Unfortunately, it also, when the whole thing blew up, Superman disappears, and we don't know why. The audience, the people on Earth, don't know why. He just kind of disappears. And it's it was that moment where I was just like, gosh, I wish that I had a better sense of what was going through his head in these moments as to why he's making some of the decisions that he's doing. And that's something that kind of left me a little distanced from him in that element of his growth.
That was one of the things, that was one of the moments where I felt a lot of this film, things happened because the story needed them to happen. Meaning, because we've talked about how the story's pushing things forward, all this kind of stuff, that we needed Superman to disappear so everyone could go, boo, where's Superman? Did he do this? Which makes no sense, because clearly it was Lieutenant Dan. But so all of that happening, there was a lot of, I thought, manipulative storytelling as far as that went. with making us forcing people to feel certain ways about certain characters, and that was a big one for me.
Wait. So there is already building anti-Superman sentiment, right? We know that the public is a fickle public, and the fickle public is already, calling for Superman to go before the court. There is a conservative, fear-mongering a political bent here, and we live this every single day. We don't need to go to a movie to understand what this is. It is life. And he goes before this. There is a bomb, a massive fireball, which the public has seen before at the hands of Superman and his Kryptonian buddies. And we're not to believe that the public would naturally sense that Superman might have had something to do with this? What I'm
That's not what we're saying. It's the fact that Superman just disappears, but we don't get any perspective from him in that.
Sure,
whole
we do.
thing.
He goes off to Lois Lane on the balcony, and they have a conversation about it.
They have a brief conversation, but it's just, I don't know. I felt like I needed more from it.
They maybe should have added a dream sequence to tell us,
or an Inception style dream sequence. I think that might have improved things. I would also, I just wanted to throw in, based on this Steve's comments. I went back and I also read the first three, and I have not gone very much further than this, but the first three of the reboot of the New 52 Action Comics, the new Superman story, in which he's wearing a short red cape, a blue Superman skin-tight t-shirt, and jeans with loafers. And
that's what I'm wearing right now.
And I'm telling you, it goes dark really fast. This Superman in 2011 is not afraid to torture and drive home his points with fear and drop people off buildings and do some things that Superman has never done. And so I, just to support that point, that it's not Zack Snyder that is pushing Superman dark. It's definitely us. It's DC pushing against this cultural reality, and I think this is the result. And we're seeing it on screen for the first time, but it's not the first time that Superman has gone dark in the last decade.
Well, and I think that's fair, and I think it's great that you bring up the political situation. But I guess when I compare it to the way that DC is building this franchise, and building all their franchises, really. I mean, you watch the TV stuff as well, versus the way that Marvel's doing it. I think Marvel's doing it with more grace. I think Marvel's doing it in a more entertaining way, and they're bringing both. It's still comic in the way that it can be terribly dark and then also funny and entertaining and all that stuff. It isn't slamming into us saying, this is dark, this is the world we live in, this is, they don't have to punch us in the face with the existence of it. Marvel's doing it in a more graceful way, I think. And I'm happier with those movies.
I guess that's a question, though. Is DC purposefully doing that just to separate themselves from feeling like, oh, it's just it's just another version of what Marvel's doing?
I think it's more, I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seems more cynical to me. I think they're just desperately trying to play catch up. Marvel was able to have grace because they spread out their collection before the Avengers over 4 or 5 movies.
True.
They made Man of Steel and then said, okay, now it's time for the Justice League. And look, here's Fasty and here's all these people. And that's one of the reasons that this film feels so overstuffed to me, is they shoved so much into it. Like JJ's saying, they hit us in the face just so they could start their plan B or whatever it's called that Marvel does.
Well, and to JJ's point, I think one of the things that is frustrating about this for me, when you look at the overall tone of the DC, and I don't know if this is a thing, speaking of things that are things, the DC cinematic universe, is how wildly different it is in tone and tenor from the DC television universe. When we look at Arrow and The Flash on DC or on television, they are wonderfully comic light and yet substantive fare. I mean, it is those are really entertaining stories, and they do a great job of kind of bringing home some of the deeper kind of relationship elements and political elements, and they're fun to watch. And when you look at Marvel, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. compared to the films, they seem like one cohesive unit. And what we get from DC is 2 completely different properties that do not talk to one another. Different people, it appears, even they don't even know what the other group is doing tonally. And I think that is a challenge, and it's something that certainly I notice.
Are they at least trying to get, like, is the guy who plays the Flash at least the guy who... It's totally
No.
different.
And it's
Flash,
a huge point of contention because The Flash is
Interesting.
actually a great rated TV show.
Yes.
And people really like it. And I agree with you, Pete, on the way the TV. I'm actually watching the TV show.
Yes.
And actually Stephen Amell, who plays Arrow, came out and did the big social media blast about the fact that they're not communicating. They're doing two separate complete things. And I think it's a huge miss on DC's part. It's not capitalizing on the possibility of exponential popularity growth.
Yeah.
Marvel's
these people
doing the
can
same
do that.
thing. Marvel's doing the same thing, though. You've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is light, and you've got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is light. Who's watching Netflix? Daredevil and Jessica Jones. Those are just as dark.
Daredevil's very
And
good.
No,
they're
that's a really
ju-
good
and-
point. That
and
is a
they
really
are
good point.
just as popular. And
Right.
so DC's doing the dark cinematic, and they've got the light. But in Marvel, you've also got the X-Men, which sort of is in the middle because Days of Future Past, and you've got Apocalypse. Those aren't looking as light as the other Marvel properties, and the preview for the new X-Men film is Marvel. Right.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
we're seeing something I know there's different studios behind there, but when the trailer played, it was Marvel. That logo came up first, that this is being branded as Marvel X-Men, and it is definitely darker in tone than we've seen in most of the Marvel universe.
I guess
cinematically.
what I sometimes base some of why I'm casting DC as more cynical and more money grabbing than Marvel, which I know is absurd because Marvel's making money hand over fist, is if there was a first brain trust that Marvel turned to, it was Joss Whedon, and DC turned to Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder, known for his visuals very much, but no delicateness, no ability to bring large casts together, no dialogue, none of those things. He is a blunt object that loves shockwave effects, whereas Joss Whedon is sort of a beloved, nerd-loved comic book fan, all of these kind of things. That I feel is just like, and then to learn that Zack Snyder is going to be overseeing the rest of the movies, I mean, that's got to break some hearts.
I love that phrasing you used because it reminds me of what Judi Dench says to Daniel Craig. You're a blunt object. It is that same type of tone they're going for, and they need to distinguish themselves. And I think,
But one is
Yes.
smart.
well, okay, it depends
that's
what you're looking
totally
for.
subjective, though, Tommy.
Yeah.
Like, there are people who really like Zack Snyder films generally. There are people out there. They may not be sitting in this group of thugs, but they are out there.
They are out there, but I mean, as far as being beloved, as far as okay, I don't know. I feel like
How do you guys feel about the Michael Bay Transformers?
terrible.
I like the first one.
Yeah, and then it's the same sort of thing, right? That the sort of the grace and the joy and the fun of what it was is gone, right? Now it's
A
just
noise machine.
what Tommy's talking about, a noise machine. It's a money thing out there, and Pete, those people out there that like this thing are probably also the people that like where the Transformers franchise is going.
Well, I disagree with that.
I disagree with that.
I think there was actually, I think there's a lot of stuff that they put into this film and trying to make something that they thought was good. I mean, I don't think that this was just an attempt to make money. I really think they were trying to, take these superheroes and really kind of create this new path so that they could have more stuff and tell more stories. I think there's some interesting stuff going on here. I don't think that it worked all the time. And I like at least, I like Zack Snyder's first 4 films that he directed. I didn't see Sucker Punch.
I really liked
Still,
Sucker
I didn't
Punch.
like. That's the only one. I didn't see that one, but Dawn of the Dead, I really enjoyed that remake. 300, I actually really enjoyed.
Yep.
Watchmen, I enjoyed, despite some problems I had, and Legend of the Guardians, I really enjoyed that one. So, I mean, I think for me, he's more, he hits more than he misses, and so
Fair enough. Subjective.
I don't know. Yeah,
I just don't.
and
I
do
putting
agree.
him in any kind of a realm with Joss Whedon just seems a surprising choice.
Well, I think, looking at people who are the people at DC and who are plucking directors to direct these. I mean, look at what he did with, 300 and Watchmen were both graphic novels that he adapted in really visually interesting ways. Now, granted, I've only read Watchmen, but I think he really worked well as far as following the path of the actual story in the books rather than kind of adapting it as well as they probably could have. But that being said, I still think he did a lot of great stuff with them.
Yeah, Watchmen was almost exact.
Yeah, despite some changes, and I haven't watched his the 9-hour version or whatever, which is supposed to be frame by frame exact. But
Wow.
but I think that he, for the most part, does some good stuff. I think I feel like there were some misdirected thoughts as far as the direction they were trying to go with this. And yes, it's dark and cynical and brooding and stuff. But, Batman and Superman are two iconic characters, like comic book characters that from when I was a young kid, they were comics that I could watch. They were TV shows that I could watch, movies I could watch. Taking my kids to this one, I felt like a bad father taking their kids to Batman.
No, let's be clear. You
Because
are a
it's
bad
just-
father for that. Yes. Let's be
well,
very
I'm
clear.
not as bad as you taking your
verified
daughter to
now.
Kingsman.
I'm not
So,
saying
I
that
like to
you're not in
say
good company.
We're down there together. But yeah, I guess for me, it's like, despite, I do like a lot of elements here. I just really pine for the days where I felt like I could safely walk into a Batman and Superman movie and just really feel it's safe for my kids.
Yeah, on the next TNR short, father failure.
I love it.
What were
We've
you gonna
talked
say,
a lot about. I was gonna say we've talked a lot about Batman and Superman. There was one character that got applause in the theater that I saw this in.
Jimmy
That was
Olsen.
that was Wonder Woman. When she
Really?
when she shows up the first time in armor, when she shows up to defend Batman against Doomsday, there was just applause breaking out all over the theater, and I was so excited with what they did with that character because it was something. Maybe it's because we haven't had anything with her. What can she do? What is it going to look like? And it was just really thrilling to me. It brought a different energy to that fight because we talked about, everybody that's seen Man of Steel, it's like Superman and Zod just relentlessly pummeling each other for it felt like half an hour. Here, with the three of them working together, brought a different dynamic to that. There was still grand scale destruction that I think went way over the top, but the dynamic of the collaboration of the three of them brought a different energy to this that really, for me, helped carry that last act through. And we didn't get any, she's a character of mystery. I love that they kept a lot of that shrouded in mystery. She was well balanced in terms of playing Bruce with their little banter back and forth. There was something, dynamic about her in combat. I just really, for me, that was the high point of the entire film. Musically, I love the theme that shows up when she's there in battle.
That's what I was about to say. Is that that's the first time Zack Snyder seems like he's having fun too.
Oh, that's an interesting comment.
He ditches the ha 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 continuous gods are fighting kind of thing, and he throws him in a guitar lick. And with that, also, Steve, she's the only person in the film, maybe Lex Luthor, who's having any fun. I mean, this film is a dour off. And so I totally agree with what you're saying, but I think it's also the way that he used her, not just her.
Although I have to say, Gal Gadot was terrific, and in my book, I think she is possibly the best cast of all of them. And I didn't have a problem with either of the two choices, Henry Cavill obviously and Affleck. I think she is going to make a terrific addition to this cast.
And was it just me, or was it Chris Pine standing next to her?
Right?
It was-
Totally looked like
It
him.
was.
No, it is because he's in the Wonder Woman movie.
He is?
Okay.
Yes, he's in the Wonder Woman movie because it starts off, I think it's World War II. Her story starts off in World War II. And do you not keep up on your geek news? No, Chris Pine, there were some set photos from early on. Yeah, he's playing, I can't remember the character's name, but yeah,
Steve Trevor.
Steve Trevor back in World War II. This is where her story starts.
That's awesome.
Because she's like thousands of years old.
That's
but
exciting.
I think the TV series, started in World War I, or World War II in the first season. So I think they're going back to that for at least the first part of her standalone film.
Let's talk just a little bit. We've talked a lot about Superman. Can we talk about Batfleck? What was your take on Ben Affleck's portrayal of the Batman?
I thought he was great. I actually really enjoyed what he did. I enjoyed his perspective about, we are criminals, Alfred. Just that whole dark perspective. Like, he's been doing this so long that he's just cynical and brooding, and I just like this dark place that it's taken to him. I thought he was actually a great choice, and I liked that element of him.
I'm right there with you. This is it's another Batman, and I'm just as happy with this Batman as I was with Christian Bale. It's a different Batman, and worked really well. For me, this film really felt like his story. Maybe I connected more with Ben Affleck and what he was doing with Bruce Wayne. I didn't really connect as much with what was going on with Clark Kent and Henry Cavill's portrayal there. But with this one, it pulled me in, and I enjoyed that performance. I felt like I'm looking forward to, because I've heard that there will be more Batman solo movies with Ben Affleck involved. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
I think I read somewhere that he's going to direct one.
Yes, that's what
Is
I've
that
heard.
right? Yeah. Just to agree with agreement, it made me want to just watch a Batman movie.
Oh, that's great to hear, Tommy. I actually expected you to be the curmudgeon on that.
No, I really liked him, and my favorite sequence of the entire movie was him saving Superman's mom. Except that he's killing people, which was distracting. Batman doesn't just take a knife and then throw the knife in someone's chest. That's just not how it works.
No, he hit it in his shoulder. I watched that. He didn't actually kill.
Yeah,
the
but he
guy.
put poison on it first. You didn't see.
Oh, that's true. I missed that part.
See, here's the thing.
I actually, my son, when we walked out of it, he's just like, why wasn't there more Batman? So at least I felt like there was something there from his perspective, that he really connected with Batman and wanted more Batman.
For me, that sequence was exactly the movie that I wanted out of the Arkham Knight, Arkham Asylum games. The video games, I think, have done an incredible job of capturing this Batman that is an incredible brawler. And I had so much fun watching this because it felt like the big screen adaptation of something I have done as this Batman on my own television. I thought they did a terrific job stylistically of Affleck playing this character.
I completely agree. I've played both games too, Pete, and I loved them. And I thought that and the other, granted, the dream sequence was so ludicrous, but the big fight there too, had that same kind of feeling of just that one kind of long shot and just taking people out and out and out. That was really fun.
You know what they did in that dream sequence? This gets into production design.
Which one are you talking
Well,
about?
you know, the sand sequence part, where he's
not the dream sequence before.
not the dream
Not
sequence
the dream
before.
sequence before.
Well, no, right, not the dream sequence. So this is the sand sequence in the future, right, where he's I don't know, future past, whatever. So he's in his like fatigue Batman uniform, and I've seen that uniform before. I know that's a thing, and I remember seeing it in the comics and thinking, God, he has a uniform for everything. How dumb!
He's like Batman Barbie.
It's Batman Barbie, and so I know on that point I may be alone. I guess I'm glad they brought it to the big screen, but it did make me. That was the only time I got to thinking, really, with the ears. You need the ears on the sand dune uniform too, I guess.
Oh, I just love that.
It's a thing.
And I love
It's
that
a
they
thing.
had.
I know.
I love that they had his like from was it the Dark Knight Returns, when he had that, like when he and Superman had that big fight in the comic, and he built that like mechanical super metal armor outfit that he was fighting Superman. And I love that that they built that into it too. I thought that was a great little.
Did you did anybody stop and think, my goodness, like as an actor, did Ben Affleck see anything while he was in that character uniform with those flashlights right in front of his eyes? I thought that was awesome. Did they put like little TVs in there so he could actually see what's going on around him with a camera? That would have been cool. That's pretty much all I could think
he was
about.
watching Argo. Which is weird.
Okay, so we're okay with Ben Affleck so far, and now let's move on to, I think, one of the more controversial but interesting casting choices, Jesse Eisenberg as Alexander Lex Luthor. What did we think of the long-haired, flamboyant young Lex?
I thought that his performance was the best in the film because I thought it was the most well-rounded. It was the most nuanced, I guess, of any character. He actually, it seemed as though he went through some sort of this progression. That being said, I don't think Lex is supposed to be crazy. But
Yeah, I was a little
again,
confused with that because they took him in a direction where I was like, is he just kind of losing his mind? What's going on with him?
Yeah, but I don't want to keep hitting on that point because Pete, you made a really good point earlier when you said this is what it is now, and I should get used to that. But I like the problem is that Lex is supposed to be this like just he wins with his intelligence,
super genius.
And his charisma, and
Yes.
he's a politician.
Yeah. Right, and that wasn't really what he did in this film. And I guess I like the way that they used to be better. Get off my
there it is.
Well, but to that point, I mean, how was Gene Hackman versus this? Because I mean, Gene Hackman was kind of fun as Lex Luthor, but he was also a buffoon.
He was kind of a
There's
used
weird,
car salesman.
Like, yeah, he's like super genius / buffoon, and I mean, especially having his sidekick around. Yeah, Mr. Luthor. You know, I don't know. I just felt like, why would Lex Luthor have this guy helping him? As funny as he was when I was a kid.
Well,
I liked Hackman better. I have to admit, I agree with you. But that buffoonery is something that I appreciated in the earlier movies. So that's why I'm in that boat.
well, for me, I was wondering about the sort of his manic nature, where he was going with that. But then it came to where he's talking with Superman, and he's talking about, or no, I'm sorry, it's when they're at the library, and he's talking about knowledge is power, and then he sort of ends that speech very abruptly with this statement along the lines of, you know, something about having knowledge and then not having power. And I felt that really encapsulated what's going on with this character, who's apparently brilliant, because we can see the long game that he plays with these, you know, with these two characters, how he's able to manipulate things and really play through his game. He's a very intelligent man who up until this point has had no power. He's got his corporation, but he's craving that political power. This is his opportunity, but I had that sense of this is something that's been festering in his mind for a long time, living in the shadow of his abusive father. Here's, you know, this is his breakthrough moment where he can, you know, become the epitome of what he imagines he can be. And to me, that helped justify some of that characterization. It's not something I love, but it's something that didn't get under my skin as much as I thought it was going to.
I thought that his portrayal was interesting. I think what was most troubling about it for me is that in the comic, if you look at particularly judging from the Lex Luthor Man of Steel series, his mistrust of Superman is very real. It is really palpable. Like, he believes, just as Affleck portrayed in the film, that Superman is an incredibly dangerous thing to this planet, right? And it was and needs to be controlled. And in Eisenberg's portrayal of Luthor, I got the feeling that was what was on the surface, but he was so crazy and maniacal that I didn't get a feeling. I didn't really walk away thinking that it was legitimate. Like, he was legitimately positioned to believe that Superman was bad for the world, but instead it was much more of a simple power play, and on Lex's part, that he just wanted to be the more powerful guy, and he was crazy enough to do anything to get there, which felt to me much more like the Joker, frankly, and much less like the Lex Luthor, in JJ's words, the Lex Luthor that we've grew up with. So that was my challenge with it.
And that was something that I felt too, because I felt like as it was getting to this point where he was going to reveal Doomsday, I was like, okay, so there's got to be some connection he's going to have to Doomsday. He gave him his blood to bring him back to life. Is there going to be a control thing where he can kind of help control him? But then he's completely out of the picture. And I really kind of felt like, there was an interesting perspective of him wanting to find a way to be more powerful than Superman, but as soon as he does that, he's gone from the movie, and I felt like that was a stumble on their part of just completely dismissing Lex Luthor at that point in the film and losing him. I was like, well, at least he can go find the spear, at least he can kind of get involved in that subplot, as silly as it would have been, but I mean, at least he would have been in the movie again, other than seeing him getting locked up. And so that, for me, really, I felt like they just didn't give that character enough of what they needed to for me to really get what I wanted out of him.
And that was actually you just brought up the only distraction for me in the final fight scene, which was Amy Adams going back for the spear.
Yes.
I guess I'm with you. I so felt like it should have been Luthor going for the spear that when she went back for it, and all this time she never left that building?
Oh my gosh, she was in there. She was wandering around for half an hour, and then, unbeknownst to anyone, she knows to go get back and get the spear.
Yeah.
Unless I
Why
missed
is she
stuff,
so involved?
there was
She's not supposed to be involved to that level.
This is when we started to get insane with the I don't know if they're logic jumps, but just pushes forward where a bunch of weird things happen off screen. That all of a sudden everyone knows. It's like groupthink, once one character learned something, there were a lot of times in this that
Yes.
everyone all of a sudden knew without talking to each other.
Okay, so that was one. The spear thing was one, but give me another because I didn't see that as much as you guys did.
Superman calling Batman Bruce. How did he know that it was Bruce Wayne?
Well, at the library, he was listening in. He could hear Bruce's conversations with Alfred. So no. And again, they didn't feed us the reveal. And I'm glad they didn't. But I think it speaks to, both of these guys. What they're getting at is they're studying each other. And I think he's been able to piece together what's going on as a journalist working for the Daily Planet, what's been going on and seeing what Bruce is doing and what the Bat is doing, that he pieced it together. And there may be a deleted scene where he put that together and impacted pacing. To me, it didn't bother me. The Lois Lane going back for the spear, I swear there was a conversation she had with somebody about whether it was with Superman or Batman of, we got to get the spear. It's the only thing that can,
They were all together in the, all three of them met up at the end of the fight between Superman and Batman.
The superheroes.
Right.
And then they all left. And she didn't say, hey, can you give me a ride somewhere? I'm just going to wander out of this factory for half an hour. But I don't remember them saying that. Because she picked up the spear and threw it away. If any one of them would have said, what's important, kryptonite or the spear, she probably wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, nobody else, based on what we saw, nobody else knew that the spear was in the water. So then Superman goes down and saves her and then goes back for the spear. Now, I'm assuming he somehow could see it down there. But that just, again, seemed like, well, if she's trying to get rid of it, why bury it in essentially what amounts to a kiddie pool full of water that it was pretty easy to salvage. So that was the thing that was a distraction for me.
And the idea of Zack Snyder holding some things back, being like, the audience will get it. I don't need to spoon feed it. While also having at the end of Superman and Batman's big fight, a seemingly 20-minute replay of Batman's parents dying just so we can remember, and his father saying Martha again. Like, we got it.
Right.
Like, I mean, we were pretty hit over the head with every single thing. So it's hard for me to believe that he would trust us for some of that stuff. I think some of those things, there was a lot of the plot that was like just slightly pushed forward, and then every once in a while it was just shoved. And then you'd say, wait, how does he know that? And then Zack Snyder goes, Shockwave.
I will say, just to that point, Tommy, I had no idea that both of their mothers were named Martha, and I actually had to go and look online to see if that was actually something that existed or if he came up with it for the movie. And I was actually really happily surprised that that's just how it is. And I really enjoyed the fact that they did use that element, as clumsy as it ended up being, but I really enjoyed that they used that to kind of connect these two characters together.
Agreed. I love the idea. The execution was ridiculous.
Was terrible.
It was such an incredibly fast turn on behalf of Batman that it was tough for me too, and I liked it.
There's that turn, and then if we need to decide to use nukes, we can do it in less than 6 minutes.
That was troublesome. But you pick your battles. Can we talk?
Get the keys!
Can we talk about Jeremy Irons as Alfred Pennyworth, please?
I liked that he was like a mechanic, Alfred. Like he had his little mechanic suit on. He was getting in there to go fix the car. I thought that was great. I enjoyed him as Alfred.
I thought it was really great, and he made, I think, a great partner and foil for for Bruce Wayne. I thought that was terrific. I loved the cave too. I think in terms of production design, I thought it was really beautifully architected. The gadgets were good and not too crazy. The car was awesome. I wanted the car. I thought the car was a great evolution of the Tumbler from the Nolan movies.
I thought it was great. I was a little concerned about his underwater cave entrance. How many fish they probably end up sucking in every time he drives it.
That was
back
yeah.
from
That
work.
was a part of when the movie was getting haywire for me. Of like, you can't just drive through a waterfall. The entire sea has to part.
Can.
Okay, Moses, Batman.
Okay, come on. Now that they did to a much larger degree in the middle of the Potomac in the last Avengers movie or the Captain America, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's settled science. So
comic book science, yes.
any other characters stand out to you guys that you would like to talk about? I suppose we should talk about Holly Hunter, who is sort of an antagonist, certainly an obstacle, but she has her opinion changed or rendered irrelevant.
Well, she grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
She can wrestle
So
pigs.
she knows how to wrestle a pig.
Yeah. That's good.
I like Holly Hunter, and I actually enjoyed her as a senator. I thought
too.
that was a good casting choice to play a senator like this. So I enjoyed her quite a bit in this, and I loved her moment as she's sitting there and has the realization of what's about to happen. I thought that was a really strong moment in the film.
Me too, for all the characters in there, all the major characters. I think Henry Cavill actually did a terrific job of that too, in that sequence.
But I just loved how she's, with the jar
Yeah.
and everything in the middle of her speech. I just, putting two and two together, I thought that was great.
I liked her too. So why did she change her mind? Why did the character change her mind when she was super anti-Superman? And then Lex wanted to stop Superman. So why did she change her mind?
I think she was anti-Superman, but at the same time, I don't think she was not, she kind of fit that Superman mindset more than the Batman mindset, I felt, where she's just like, I want to control Superman, but having a weapon of mass destruction to do so is not the way. We need to find a better way to do it. And that's why they were having this hearing. And she even says that we are here to talk. That is what people do. And I thought that was pretty clear from my perspective.
It was an enemy of my enemy thing, right? I mean, she recognized
Right.
in Lex somebody who is truly dangerous at an ideological level. I think that was the awakening that I think I got from their conversation in that in the office.
I liked that when before the reveal that it's a cup of piss tea, that when they're moving in towards her, and you could see, if you were looking, you could see that it was a mason jar already before it even cut back to her. And I was like, we get it. She's from a farm. Senators don't just drink out of mason jars. And then I was like, oh, cup of piss. Fair enough.
Oh, that Zack Snyder nuance again.
Yeah.
We skipped over Amy Adams.
Did we?
No, I think that's the one weakness of the film is,
I don't think it's her fault.
And I don't know if it's just the character of Lois Lane, whose function is a plot device to cause Superman to react in certain ways. To either divert him from something or cause him to take action. She's a pawn that gets used in different ways. I did think that, at the beginning, I did have questions about whether or not that was Jimmy Olsen that was the photographer with her at the very beginning, and then I looked, and yes, that's sort of a little thing that didn't get
shot?
Yeah, that was Jimmy Olsen that they shot at the beginning.
that's terrible.
So I thought, she started off a little bit stronger of a character at the beginning, but by the end it was, she's just
Damsel
I'm
in
going to go
peril.
get the spear, damsel in peril. So
She was sort of a D story, right? I mean, we needed a little bit of that political intrigue. We needed the mystery around the bullet, all to lead back to Lex to build this case that Lex and Bruce Wayne, who at the beginning of the film are ideologically aligned, become ideologically misaligned. We needed that. And I think it ended up being a little bit clumsy, but I imagine that this R-rated, Blu-ray that we're going to see come July, which apparently will include the reveal that photographer, double agent, CIA agent is Jimmy Olsen by name. We're going to see, a lot of extra footage that fills in some of those blanks that I think make it look clumsy now.
I don't fault Amy Adams though.
No, I don't think it's
No,
her fault.
no.
I just feel like they haven't. I know they're trying to write the tough reporter that Lois Lane always was, but I don't know. I just don't feel like they've found their footing. I don't think they did with Margot Kidder either. I mean, I enjoyed her in the first Superman, but then she did quickly become kind of a damsel in distress, and it got progressively worse with those.
Well, and you have to remember she was Margot Kidder got spazzy as soon as the relationship between Clark Kent and Margot Kidder became something, and in this movie it was more of a substantive relationship. I actually really liked the love scene, sort of entree to the love scene of him climbing in the bathtub. I thought that was fun and satisfying and sexy, and I thought it was great.
Again, a little too much for me.
No, you mean too much for the kids?
It's too far. Yes, it's like don't need to have that happen right out of the gate with this. Who is the Lois Lane in the Superman Returns?
Kate Bosworth.
Yeah, I feel like I felt they wrote her better, or that version of Lois Lane in that film.
They wrote her more intelligent. And that is the reason why I bring up Amy Adams here, because you guys really liked a lot of the performances, so I don't want to take away from what you guys have said there. But I think that Amy Adams is actually one of my favorites in general. And I think in both this movie and Man of Steel, they do a really poor job of making her look good, whether it's as the Lois character or in general, the way they shoot her. It's just they're picking bad clothing, they're picking bad shots, and I think they frame everyone really strangely as well. So, like, for example, I really like Ben Affleck too, but I didn't particularly like him in this movie because I think they shoot him in this really sort of heavy way, and everyone looks sort of it's sort of pulling at them. And you think Amy Adams in like American Hustle, right? I mean, she can look stunning,
Bombshell.
and yeah, and they aren't doing that with her here. And I don't think they've taken care with any of the actors in the way that they look, in the way the treatment that they're given, and that frustrates me in the way they made the movie. I don't know if that's cinematography or if that's direction, but that's where I kind of get into the question of where is the care in this movie. So I don't want to go too far in depth or take us in another direction with that, but that was my thing. The reason why I thought Lex Luthor was the best performance is I felt like that was the only really feature where the camera was featuring him, the story was featuring him in a way that was complementary to the character and to the actor. In none of the other actors nor in the characters do I feel that way.
Well, I think with Ben Affleck, they were going back to, if you look at Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, how Bruce Wayne looks there. I mean, he is just he's big,
brick house.
a big brick. And I thought they did a very good job because I thought, I don't remember Ben Affleck looking that just broad, but it to me, it worked. It gave that character some weight to go up against Superman. He's got to have that bulk and that mass that he's of substance. The character, aside from Lois Lane being really not well written, giving her much to do, Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. Just, okay, here's your mug. Go walk around and just shout at your staff. There wasn't really anything for that character. I don't know,
but that's always been that character. I mean, I don't know him from the comic books, but even the Christopher Reeve version, and I can't remember what actor it was. I should, because he's a well-known one, but it was the same way.
Yeah,
More
I guess I was just
comic
looking.
relief.
I just was looking for more in terms of the plot of if you're going to have Lois Lane and Perry White, they're working to solve this mystery of the bullet or that or what's going on. That there would be something a little bit more other than, Clark, you still haven't turned in your article, and Lois, no, you can't get on a helicopter. And that was about, I think, the extent of the majority of his dialogue.
Yeah, Andy, that was Jackie Cooper, and I think you're right. He was still that character. Jackie Cooper was that character in the original Superman.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you guys know if they added like bubbles for the muscles to the costumes of either of these two guys?
I always assume they do, but
Yeah.
then you see Henry Cavill with his shirt off, and it's like, wow, they probably didn't have to add too much.
They
Henry
probably had to
Cavill
reduce it in CGI because it doesn't look human.
Yeah, it's and even
I will tell you that my family dressed up as the Justice League last year for Halloween, and I had to wear Superman, and the bubbles they put in my costume were ridiculous.
the montage
So
of
funny.
Ben Affleck working out was sadly aspirational.
Needless.
Right. Like,
With his-
of
with
course,
his-
I should tie a weight to my ankles when
Yes,
I'm doing my
that's right.
pull-ups next
Because
time.
I didn't
Right.
realize
Totally
it was
worthless.
going to be a Batman CrossFit moment.
It was
And
CrossFit, yeah, when he's
early
beating up
on-
the tire.
Well,
and-
he's beating a tire with a bat, and I was like, you should probably have Alfred take a look at that. Like, I thought he was trying to fix things, and I was like, oh, Bruce.
That was a strange first one.
You're not in charge of the technical stuff. That's not how you change a tire.
We we did not talk about I think we talked about it, even though we didn't talk about it. Chris Terrio and David Goyer with the writing of this film. Do we want to talk at all about the script before we move on to the really important stuff?
Well, Pete, you said that you liked the pacing.
I did.
The pacing for me felt like it was kind of emotional pinballing, in that, and that was with the soundtrack as well. But it felt like there were all these tiny. I brought up the nukes thing earlier. That they gave us it's not really a vignette, but they would put them in these little bunches, and then there'd be a crescendo of something, and then it would just go away. And I feel like it had all these sort of mini crises that it just never felt like it got in a stride for me. So I had a different feeling about it than you did in that respect.
I do think it's interesting that Goyer was involved, and the fact that he has been involved in so many Batman stories for so long. I mean, he did all of the Nolan ones with him, I believe, and then just even things like Ghost Rider and things like that. I mean, he's done a lot of comic stuff. He's played a lot of even some of the video game stuff. So I feel like he's really tapped into it. So I don't know. Maybe it's the Goyer side of things that I'm connecting with more here. I don't know. It's interesting.
I think they were faced with a particular challenge in this film, and that is to find a way to jam a number of iconic characters into this film and make them all feel like they are well-heeled characters. And I think they did a fine job in the context of this story. I didn't feel like any of the character arcs were out of balance. And that I think is a win for me. You know, I liked the way we moved from the political story to the revenge story to the newspaper to the politics. I think they moved me around well enough that it felt it didn't feel like any one character was getting short shrift. And that was honestly my biggest concern going into the film was, is this going to be Batman versus Superman, or is it going to be a Batman movie and Superman's there, or is it going to be Superman's movie and, you know, Batman's just hanging around? Like, I think they did a great job of balancing these big characters and big actors.
Did you feel like they were character arcs?
I do. I felt like I felt like I learned. I felt like Superman learned as a result of his experience in this film, and I feel like he's going to be a different character in the next film. I feel like he's as a result of his experience here, he's going to be a different character. I think Batman
He
certainly
can create
learned.
anti-gravity now.
JJ.
That's from Man of Steel as well. That's part of this universe. I think, you know, in terms of the balance, it was there. You know, I agree with Pete. I think anytime you have to split it, you can't get as in depth unless you're going to like 3.5 hours, you know, of movie length. So I think you've got to keep the economy of story. You've got to keep it moving along. You're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of depth, but I didn't feel like this was one of those overstuffed like Joel Schumacher Batman movies where it's like we've got so many things going on. It's just like it's chaos. Everything tied together to me nicely. You know, again, this is not, I wouldn't say it's a perfect film or, you know, an ideal, but it managed to keep a balance that kept me entertained from the beginning. I knew we were going to have to get a little bit of front loading of a lot of the plot up front of everybody's motivation and where they're going, but they were able to get through that. Act 3 became the big brawl again. I think the dynamic kept that from becoming just a wash of destruction like Man of Steel. So to me, it was a well-balanced film. I personally felt it was more of Batman's story, but there was enough Superman stuff in there that he wasn't just sort of window dressing hanging around in this film.
I did like during the big brawl that it felt like Snyder pointing out to his audience from the last film, people complaining about kind of the whole thing with Superman destroying the city.
I already know what
The
you're
fact
about
that
to say.
it's just when Wonder Woman shows up, she's like, "Why did you bring him back to the city?" He's like, "Oh, this is completely desolate. There's nobody here."
That happens a couple times. I feel like
It
the
does.
only
They
thing
make a
that's,
big deal
that
about
Zack
it.
Snyder learned from the last one is to have people off screen
Right.
say it's abandoned. Like that happens.
Don't worry, nobody's
Even
here.
The
That's an
the
island.
newscaster
Nobody's
says,
there.
Thank God it's happening here because this is just apparently an island filled with gasoline. Like
Yes.
there's still gas lines running, but apparently it's just desolate gas. Great.
But, you know, I mean, to be fair, that's pretty believable because Man of Steel, they destroyed everything, right? Of course, there's going to be a desolate part of the city that hasn't been rebuilt. I didn't find that. Maybe it was a little on the nose that they said it so many times.
Well, no, because the newscaster, I think that one of the newscasters said, "Oh, it's because it's down at the port and everybody's gone home from work, so nobody's around."
Right.
But we did learn. I think in back channels we talked about this, the geography. So we've learned where
right.
Gotham is in terms of Metropolis. Where are they? They're sort of across the bay from each other. Or
Yeah,
something?
it's like New York City
Yeah.
and Newark. Or something.
The boroughs.
Newark.
Yeah, because you can see the bat signal from Metropolis.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
that was surprising
exactly.
to me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Junkie XL and Hans Zimmer, once again, collaborating on this film after Man of Steel.
I love Hans Zimmer, and I think hearing the Inception music again in this movie was awesome.
You're
I really
a
do love
hard
Hans Zimmer.
man.
But that yeah,
I do too. I think I mean I'm with you. I actually agree. But I also think that the Wonder Woman theme in particular was strong, and I loved the Superman theme from the last movie. I thought it was really a great symphonic earworm, and I was disappointed that he made an intentional choice in this film to try to do something new and different. What I really wanted more than anything was more of the last film, which I thought was a stronger score overall. So there were some real highlights here, but overall...
I actually felt that he developed his themes from that one a little... I kind of liked the way that he developed the themes a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it still wasn't my favorite score, but I mean, I still enjoyed the development from Man of Steel to this one and the inclusion of Wonder Woman in particular.
I guess what I'm saying is I wish they had just taken the score from...
Right.
that movie and just take
Not
here's
done
let
any
me just send you the CD and you just rescore it, just press play to underscore. Anyhow, okay. What I want to hear more than anything is, has this conversation changed any minds at all? And the only mind, frankly, that I care about is JJ.
Well, I'm really glad we had that. There's the balance here because, like I said at the beginning, I'm really happy that people had a different opinion than mine in it. I'm actually I think you guys would probably say that I've made a fair amount of sarcastic comments over the course of this podcast, but I'm actually holding back a few more of mine because I don't want to sound like such a hater on some of the things that. But I had a lot of problems with the movie in general, and I think it's really interesting that that you guys bring up the fact that some of the stuff didn't hit as on the nose to you, because that was kind of my biggest problem with the film, is that I felt like it was all on the nose. And I think it was Steve that brought up that it didn't feel like a Joel Schumacher thing where everything got out of control. Well, it did for me, in that it felt like the dark, graphic, violent version of Batman and Robin. And that was something that was just because it's more dramatic doesn't make it better for me. The last sarcastic thing that I'll say about it is that if Bruce Wayne is going to make a bunch of weapons to stop Superman, and he already knows that kryptonite is going to stop him, why do they have guns? Why does he bring up guns? Why does he have guns shoot Superman? He knows that's not going to work. He's Bruce Wayne, right? You didn't change my mind, but I'm really glad there was a balance here, and I'm really glad to hear that you guys like the movie more than me.
Fair enough. Tommy?
I feel like, I'm definitely siding more with JJ. Not that it's a fight. Oh my gosh, it is. It's a film board via film board. Dawn of nonsense. It had a lot of trouble. I think the main problem, I don't blame the actors. I don't blame the writers that much. I still kind of believe that DC is being greedy and just overstepping too fast in order to catch up. And that led to what I felt was an overstuffed, at times underthought film that really did mostly look great, but that left me wanting a lot more.
All right, Andy?
I do enjoy it. I definitely have problems with the movie, but I ended up feeling like it came out not as bad as everything that I've been hearing. I've been hearing nothing but just vitriol and hate and just a lot of just awful things about it. And I'm just like, it's not that. I mean, and again, I'm not a huge fan of the comics, and I think a lot of people who are saying that are people who are fans of them and feel like, Snyder's been betraying them with all of these films he's been making. I don't feel that way. I think the critics have been harsh. It definitely has its problems. I feel like they took on something that was very ambitious, and I don't feel like they delivered it in the way that was working the best for what they wanted out of it. I do think that it does lead well into a Justice League setup, and I think that is fine, and I'm happy with that because I'm excited about that. I can't wait to see the Wonder Twins. That's going to be my favorite part. My biggest problem with this film is that they just took the characters and the whole story in just darker directions than I felt they needed to. I mean, I understand why something like Deadpool goes in the direction that it does, because that just kind of really fits. But in Batman and Superman, I just don't feel like they had to take it there, yet they did. And I know Nolan had already created a darker Batman, and I think that's fine. But I think that they took it into even darker territory than where Nolan had taken it. And not just darker, but just in places that I don't feel like they needed to take it in a comic book film. So that disappointed me a little bit. Certainly felt uncomfortable watching it with my kids, but in the end I still walked out of it saying, you know what, I still enjoyed it.
All right, Steve.
So this isn't one of my favorite superhero movies, but what I do really appreciate, and I think it's fitting that this film was released on the weekend that it was released, because as I thought back about Man of Steel, what that story really is. And this one, as I said, Lex Luthor gets into sort of mythology, and as superheroes being mythological figures, we have the story of Superman, somebody not of this earth that is sent by his father to this planet to save the people of Earth, is a misunderstood character. And in this story, we get his betrayal and death. And I thought that was very fitting thematically to put on Easter weekend. And I think there's some deeper things that go on in this film in terms of mythology about how we view others and outsiders. And what I really appreciated is at the very end of the film, Bruce Wayne talking to Diana Prince, about finding the rest of the other metahumans, that they're going to have to work together. He was very much a, patriot fighting the outsider. And he's now realized that, yes, he's going to have to work with these other individuals, that he's going to have to find them and they're going to have to fight. And it's about a community of different folks with different backgrounds coming together to fight a common enemy that is alluded to. And to me, there is no better message for this country to hear in an election year than we have to be able to understand and work with those people that we don't understand to be united as a country.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, I kind of like the movie now.
Uh-huh. Well done,
said,
Steve.
Well said,
You should have
Steve.
gone first.
Yeah.
That was well said, Steve. I agree with you. I think I went last mostly because I think I liked it the most. I did not have the problems you guys did. I think my pre-programming and meditation around Zack Snyder worked, and I feel like as gloomy as this was, I still found myself walking out having enjoyed the experience overall, and I'm like Andy, really looking forward to the next film. I think that we're set up. I think it'll be really interesting. When you look at this movie as again that transition period to the DC cinematic universe, it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. We get what I imagine will be an even darker experience with Suicide Squad coming up in August of this year, and then next year Wonder Woman and Justice League Part 1, and then The Flash and Aquaman in 2018, and then Justice League 2 in June, Cyborg April 3rd of 2019, Green Lantern in June of 2019. DC has its plate not quite as full as Marvel, but it's getting there, and I think it'll be interesting once this engine is fully revved up and we actually see the identity, the overall sort of ideological worldview that the cinematic universe at DC is going to present, because I don't feel like we really know what that is yet, and so I'm excited about it.
I couldn't be less happy about everything you just said. I don't want this to happen. Any of this. You're talking about years and years and years. Oh,
Yes.
All right. That's me.
Yes, I am. Get ready.
I'm going to move to the woods with my puppy.
I'm going to
Well,
buy you
why-
a satellite.
Yeah.
Why do you think they'll have to fight? I have a feeling.
All right. Well, it is. I think it is time, as we wrap up the meat of our conversation, it's time to rank it.
No, not that big a fan. Flick chart.
Oh, Tommy.
I said I don't spend any time on movies that I don't care for. Do you remember the
that
Hobbit
is-
theme? At least this one had more than half a second.
Flickchart. Head over to flickchart.com, everybody, and you log into your accounts. If you are, if you're crazy like us, you probably have your own separate Film Board Flickchart account. That's the one you were going to get the username and password for that one, and log in, because we're going to do it. Batman v Superman versus Andy.
This is a great way to start. Batman v Superman or The Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises.
I'm actually going to say Batman v Superman because I had so many problems with The Dark Knight Rises.
I'm going to
All
say
over the
Batman
place.
v Superman.
Yeah, Batman v Superman.
Batman v Superman, because Dark Knight Rises made me frustrated and angry. This one did not.
Next up, Batman v Superman or World War Z.
World War
World
Z.
War Z. World War Z.
World War Z.
World War
War
Z
Z.
for everybody. Batman v Superman, or we've talked about a lot of superhero movies.
Yes, we have.
Oh, really?
Or Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Captain America,
yes,
the Winter
Tommy
Soldier.
knows.
Ooh.
Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This is Tommy.
Captain America.
In a weird way, I kind of enjoyed Batman versus Superman better, but I feel like I would probably watch Captain America first, despite as Steve is going to say the exposition. Right there.
Yeah.
Thank you. But there, well, and that gets into what you're ranking them on, the enjoyability factor, because yes, as we discussed, Marvel is a little bit lighter in tone. And despite its flaws, I mean, Captain America: Winter Soldier is definitely a much more fun movie to watch. So I'm leaning that way, because even this one has its flaws, but it didn't anger me as much. Yeah, let's make it a unanimous Captain America: Winter Soldier.
First time ever. First time Steve picked that
Oh
movie.
my gosh!
If you're gonna open a river and have a vehicle go in or out, you want to go big. That's all I'm saying. That's the only reason I ranked it higher. That's it.
All right, here is one from recent months: Batman v Superman or The Finest Hours.
Batman.
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 Just like she did.
Everyone turn on your lights, just like she did.
Go get that kryptonite spear from the pool, just like she did.
I enjoyed The Finest Hours, but I would say Batman versus
I
Superman.
did too. I think you guys are so hard on that movie, but I also am going to do Batman v Superman.
Worse.
Oh,
You
man.
guys are awful. Batman versus Superman or Side Effects.
Side effects.
Side effects.
My old pal, side effects.
That's a film I feel like I never want to return to.
Yeah, I'm Batman v Superman.
I don't know
for
why.
sure.
Yeah, I think I'd do Batman.
Ty?
Ooh, it's a tie.
Steve? It's all on
Oh,
you.
really? Oh my gosh! Because I listened to that podcast,
Steve.
and oh my gosh, we had a lot of problems with it, and we all said we wanted to go back and watch it again. Oh, this is so tough.
Steve. Side effects. Do you guys hear that? I think there's some interference. Side effects.
I'm gonna go Batman because of I think the whole sort of mythological aspect to it, to tie into something larger, is something that I appreciate the depth.
Yeah, your whole last speech, man.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
Batman.
I thought that
Yeah.
would be a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Batman v Superman or Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Ultron.
But JJ, you hated the Ultron robot in that movie so much.
I did.
I did too.
Yeah, with his moving mouth and everything.
Ugh, Doomsday. Everything. I hate it all.
Can we have Doomsday fight Ultron? Is that, fake things, fighting fake
Yeah.
things?
Hey, how did Jesse Eisenberg know that he was going to create Doomsday? It's a little late to bring that up. Keep going.
He learned in less than 10 minutes the entire history.
Oh,
of
right.
Krypton.
That's what the computers, he said, teach me everything, just the good parts about creating Doomsday. I'm sorry.
I love that you guys are picking that up when he's standing in a spaceship from another planet that also does not exist. Like, really, you're gonna.
But he
hang
already
around
knew-
on this
but he
10
already
minute
knew to
learning
bring-
thing when he's on a spaceship
But
in
he
the middle of
already
the city.
knew to bring Michael Shannon there, so he already knew even before the computer told him to. Why am I bringing this up? I'm blowing my throat. Let's do this.
I know.
No, loved it. Okay, go.
I don't even remember what movie we're doing right now. What is it?
We're doing
Ultron.
Batman versus Superman or Avengers:
it's
Age of Ultron.
Yeah, Ultron was, okay.
Yeah, I'd guess I'd go with Ultron. Yeah. All right, that's it. Number 18, right between Avengers: Age of Ultron and Side Effects.
That's a good spot.
Huh. That's fun.
Unless you really liked side effects.
I did. Steve.
Me too.
All right. Well, this was a great conversation, boys. I really appreciate this, and I think now is time for us to talk about our stars, which I think may be even more divisive for letterboxd.com/thenextreel. JJ, go ahead.
2, please.
2. That's actually quite gracious.
It's higher than I thought you'd say.
Tommy?
2.
Steve?
Wait, is it out of 3?
That's a 5.
I'd give this a solid 4.
Wow.
Ooh. Andy, where are you? Look at me. I'm going last because I don't know what I want to
I
get
know.
to.
Edging
I'm
your
not
star.
committal.
Well, I'm actually at 2.5, but I feel like I feel like that half is. It feels like a big gap between Tommy and JJ's 2 and my 2.
I did not know. I forgot that we could do halves. I would lower mine to 1.5. No, 2.
Oh.
Whatever. I was trying to make this difficult.
So what are you,
So
Andy?
that leaves. I'm 2.5. I feel like it's right in the middle of the road for me.
Wow.
I still enjoyed it, but I had problems with it. Yeah. Middle of the road.
All right. Well, I think I'm a solid 3. I feel pretty good about 3. So that puts us at what? Right around 3, 2.5 on an average?
Well, let me tell you.
Side effects, side effects, side effects, side effects, side effects.
2.7.
So it rounds to 3. Okay.
Can you do 2.7 on Letterboxd?
It rounds up to 3.
Feature request. I want 3 decimal places. The real question then is, where do we go from here? What is our next film, Andy?
Well,
do you know?
Well, Pete, you and I are going to be chatting about Goodbye, Mr. Chips, another in our 1939 series.
Excellent. That's coming up just this
So that
week.
will be nice. That will be coming up soon. And then Steve is going to be doing another of his 3 of a kind.
Yes.
And it's going to be 3 of a kind. Do you know who you are?
That's right.
Oh, are you revealing the films yet, or is that would that be spoilerific?
I don't, I like to keep it shrouded in mystery so that people can keep guessing, but
Oh, I like that.
But
Bat
I
Steve.
kind of I'll let you know what I'm doing with this is picking 2 films that people are probably very aware of, and then the third is something that's maybe will be a new discovery for people. That's something last 3 of a kind. Amadeus was a very well-known film, but I think, and The Prestige was maybe in the middle. Big Night, I think not a lot of people had heard about. So I'm trying to keep that going with this. So there'll be 2 films that you've probably heard about, and one that I hope will be a new discovery for people.
Great
Very smart.
selections.
Very
Love
smart.
that series. And then what's our
Like
next?
the Owls of Ga'Hoole.
What's our next film board discussion?
Next month, we're going to be talking about Demolition, little Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, no
I
superheroes
believe-
in that.
I was just going to say, I believe he's playing a superhero who destroys
What?
houses. Yes.
No, he's playing himself, but he's all CG.
Perfect.
Great conversation, guys. As always, thank you so much for joining this film board. Steve, always good to hear your voice.
It's always a pleasure talking with you, gents.
JJ,
Thanks, guys. Comic books forever.
much love. Tommy,
America!
Andy,
We'll talk to you soon.
and I'm Pete. Thanks, everybody. Catch you next week.
You know what happens to me all the time in dreams? I get knocked out. There's a hard cut to black, and then I wake up tied up. That has never happened in the history of dreams. This is the stuff that I didn't bring to the show because it would waste time. I'm trying to be better. Isn't that good? Pete, should we stop recording? I'm stopping recording now.